Okay, today's beautiful day. Nice. It's supposed to be stormy later though. Very basic, easy day. I've got errands to run, so I can't get all head to toe filthy. Air filter. Simple stuff. It's one of those things, if you buy a used car, used truck, used Jeep especially, basic maintenance stuff. Change all the fluids. Change the spark plugs. Cap and rotor if it's a old school vehicle. Points if it's even older, or at least check them. Air filter, oil filter. No telling when this was replaced before. And got the other LJ over there. So as long as I was ordering an air filter, I got two. In all seriousness, the Jeep gets driven off-road a lot. Arguably could change the air filter after every run. I'm not in the Dust Bowl. Northeast off-roading is typically pretty wet, damp. The trails don't usually put up a ton of dust. Bigger parks like Roush Creek and AOAA, there are sections of exposed trail from the fact that in the past those lands have been used, I think, for coal mining, and they've also done some logging there, so lots of sunlight on the dirt will eventually dry it out and get you some dusty conditions, but it's not like the whole park is like that. Plenty of damp to muddy, loamy soil, clay soil, just dirt, lots of moss and rocks, so it's not like the air filters are getting non-stop desert dust. But I would say do them more often than even the heavy duty use in the owner's manual says on off-road vehicles, just because it is more heavy duty than what the manufacturer really expects. A mile off-road is probably 100 miles on-road as far as that kind of stuff goes. So air filters on Jeeps, super easy. The Jeep TJ, this is about as easy as it'll ever be. Airbox has these funky little clips. There's 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's open. It's loose. Now, depending on the circumstances, to get it to really move, you may want to pull that vent tube off of the off the valve cover, and you may want to disconnect your air tube from the throttle body if you don't have enough slack to get things out of the way. In this case, I've already had this off all the way. I've already done an inspection of the air box itself. It's a little dusty, but nothing incredible. And it's hard to really judge, especially on camera, how dirty this thing is, but it's definitely ready for a change. I'm not throwing any money away replacing that. Brand of filters. I'm not a big brand guy when it comes to this stuff. These are Wix. Wix is arguably one of the top names. So I did pop that hose off. Arguably one of the top names of filters. And I believe they get reboxed for some of the other brands. But whoever's making air filters, just make sure it's not the cheapest garbage thing around, and just make sure you're replacing it frequently and checking it frequently. If you do a water crossing and you bathe it in mud, even once it dries out, it's not passing near enough air. And these are just, to get these back on, you just kind of lift up and pull, but you have to make sure that the air box is fully seated, otherwise they get a little bit challenging to get on there. So that's it. Hose is back on, clips are back on, air filter done. Whammo bammo. Garbage. We'll get that taken care of in a little bit. Like I said, 2 LJs, 2 filters. Mine's a little bit tighter because of the filters, or the fenders rather. They have you move the airbox inboard, and then I got some wiring running up there. I'm not 100% done on wiring on this thing. These heavy lines are going straight to the battery for my winch. And then the smaller line is my dash control for the winch. I'm gonna go ahead and pop that hose off preemptively, because I know this one is a little bit more challenging to wiggle around. And yeah, this one's due. The last off-road trip I took, it definitely got done in. So yeah, no excuses. That's too dirty. Let's do that again. Can you see that dust cloud? I know it's probably hard on. A little wisp of dust means it's been way too long for that filter. So I must have missed a change somewhere there. I know that last trip I really got it done in pretty good. Made in Mexico. Alright, doesn't matter. It worked. The important thing is it worked. It kept the dirt in it instead of inside of my engine. So I don't really care where it was made. Let's get a look. Oh, dropping this thing all over the place. This one's also made in Mexico. If I have to guess, I think this one, the old one, I think is a Fram, and the new one is the Wix. They both use an expanded metal cage to keep the filter element from going into the engine if it gets tore up, basically. This one has a wider opening spacing, and then a paper element on the other side. Now, it did look something like this, so shame on me. That was bad. Got my helper with me. Okay, slid down in there. Now, the way this works, opening up underneath the hood behind the headlight. So if you hit water and you don't do it in a completely moronic fashion, the idea is that even if water is splashing up into the engine compartment, there's going to be an air pocket up under the hood, up under there. That's going to limit the amount of water that's getting into that air filter horn. And then the water and air go into the bottom of the box. The engine feeds from the top of the box. So it would have to pull fluid through this filter up into the top of the box, into that tube to get into the engine. So it protects you from hydrolocking the engine somewhat. It's not foolproof, guys. Don't put the nose of this thing underwater. You will kill your engine. But water crossings at normal speed to a certain depth, based on how tall your Jeep is, where that opening is, you can get away with it some. Also, the bottom of the box is not waterproof. They got rubber grommets in there, but they're not waterproof. So even if that horn isn't underwater, you may be seeping water into the box from underneath. Just keep in mind, it's easy to kill an engine. If you get water in there, it doesn't compress, it will just hydrolock your engine, and then you're in rebuild territory. One of the club members a couple years ago hit a puddle a little fast with a JKU. Not exactly the same setup, and he actually had a cold air intake on it from a previous owner, I think. Or maybe he put it on, I don't remember. But sucked enough water up in there, filled the cylinders. We were able to get the water out, get the engine running. He finished out the day wheeling, drove out to dinner that night, wheeled the next day. Everything seemed okay. Tried to drive home the next evening or afternoon, and turned out one of the rods was bent. I only need a second hand here. Turns out one of the rods was bent, and he ended up stuck on the side of the road. Had to be trailered home. So, I'm not saying don't do water crossings. Do them responsibly. There we go. This is fighting me too much. I'm going to open it back up. Double check things. Anyway, as I was saying, yeah, see how much easier that was, guys? If it's that hard to fight, then maybe something wasn't where it belongs. Take the 3 seconds to pop it back open and recheck. That went on much easier the second time. Anyway, JKU crossed the water a little too rambunctiously. Water in the engine. Ended up that he had bent a rod, connecting rod holding the piston, and it did it okay until it didn't do it okay anymore, and it let go inside the engine. So he got it fixed. I got a bunch of crap under this hood. Haven't finished plumbing some of the air stuff, and yes, it has air horns. Used to do parades. Used to do the St. Patty's Day parade every year with a friend who is a shop owner and was invited because of that. Had to remove the air tank for the new suspension and haven't decided if I'm putting another one in. If I don't, the horns will come out. But just to touch on what I was saying the other day. Stock engine. Fairly stock drivetrain. Until it gets to the drive shafts. I don't want big power adders putting a whole lot of extra strain on everything downstream when I'm taking this thing into places where it's going to be hard to get out, and it may take a good distance to get out. So even if the budget someday allows for something fun like a Hemi swap or a LS swap or whatever, it won't be getting a huge cam and a turbocharger and supercharger and all that stuff. I'm not racing. I'm not doing the rock bouncing they do down south. It looks awesome, looks like a lot of fun, but it's not my thing. It's not what we do up here, so I need this to be reliable. I want to get out on the trail, rock crawl it, maybe hit some mud, because the wife and kids love the mud, and we got tires that should be able to handle it. And then drive either home or to the trailer. So, reliability is king. OEMs spend millions of dollars figuring out how to avoid warranty claims by making stuff reliable. They cut down the power enough. You know, they figure out, okay, if it can handle 250 horsepower, we'll sell it at 190, so it's going to be safe. So, I like to leave it that way. Yeah, so 2 oil filters, or 2 air filters rather, done in a few minutes. Looks like about 16 minutes into this video. So with me yammering and switching between 2 vehicles, 16 minutes. Easy change. Next up, oil change.